could see them, but the normal people couldn't see them. You're moving at a different harmonic. You know, your sound and your vibration and your language and your garden is totally everything at once. You know, the consciousness of water and how we're, you know, over 90% water, right? And we're elements of the earth and universe, right? So, in a nutshell, what's happened here, what's happening on Earth is like this little lotus right here. It's never ever happened before. You know?
Yeah.
You know, and the universe and dimensions have put themselves together to bring us together. You know, the beautiful thing is that when you're lost, you get found, right? So it's like in our own personal struggles. If you're in the valley of darkness or the worst, darkest spot in your life, you know you couldn't get any darker. You know there's no place but up, right? So if they're lost and confused, you're going to immediately go right into what is their roots. You know, I want to know who their roots are. Are you Asian? Are you Nordic? Are you Sami? Are you Celtic? Are you Irish? Are you African American? Are you Caribbean? Are you, you know, South American? And then we begin the conversation. Well, because the big deal is colonization, right? Colonization is the mind. Before anything was discovered, colonization of the mind took place in Europe.
Yeah.
1,000 years before they even went out into their colonies. So why did they get colonized? They destroyed the genocide of the women in Europe.
Yeah.
That's a story untold.
That's, the absolute genocide of women in Europe.
Yeah,
untold.
They totally destroyed all the women, right? The Pista Sophia.
The church.
Yeah, and that was the burning of the women. They called the crusade,
the witch burnings,
and witch actually in old English means Wicca, Wiccan, right. And what it actually means is unlicensed sorcerer.
That's what happened.
So,
unlicensed sorcerer. So that's like me being Native American, giving me a status card to say I'm an Indian. You know, I do not need that. You know, and neither do you need a license to fly or drive or however. It's institutionalization, right?
Yeah.
But they spun all these stories saying these women were working for the devil and they're evil and they're against the church and all that.
So Da Vinci's, you know, there's a 13th one in there. It's a female, the woman, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So the sacred scrolls of the Gnostics and Nagamadis, they talk of the sacred woman, the divine feminine.
That's right. Got
So this world now is going through a masculine-feminine phase. You know, boys are girls and girls are boys and girls are making girls and boys. And they don't know how to.
I think the talking heads.
And they don't know how to be parents, and they don't know how to be parents because their parents didn't know how to be parents. So it goes, yeah. So in our culture, and I'm speaking all about my world over here.
Yeah.
And it's very important that cycle and that lineage takes place, right?
Yeah.
So we have relationships that are timeless, and as I mentioned with regards to our language is alive. So, for example, my elder, he could sing a song and call in rain, you know, and rain will come, right? So forget about harp and all that.
Yeah.
He could already do that.
Yeah, you guys
are they, Kevin? Are they just trying to mimic now with this technology?
I see it's catching up, but it's not. You know, like these phones right now. For example, there was a medicine man. His son went off to school, and the family got sick, and so they did a shaking tent, and he was 1,000 miles away. A shaking tent is a lodge where it's a light lodge, and he went into this lodge, and in that. So what had happened was his son, 1,000 miles away, got in. He had a six-pack, and he sat down, and he felt real tired. And he went for a quick nap, and through that dream world, they got a hold of him to say, "Come home immediately. Your father's sick." And so he just got up. After that, his friends were here like this. He said, "I gotta go home. I gotta go home." Went 1,000 miles back home, and sure enough, you know.
If we had star travel, if we developed star travel in 10 years, and so we could build 100 interstellar ships, what would be the first thing we would do? We would go visit life planets in other solar systems.
That's right.
To see what was there.
Yeah.
Well, they've been doing this a long time. So, interactions going back forever. More intense interactions as we approach sentience, as we develop toward the Homo sapiens sapiens. And as we develop civilization, even more intense interactions. And then as we approach the particular time we're in, possibly open contact, which is another milestone, right? You know, in other words, being out in the open 50 million years ago on this planet is one thing. Being out in the open as ETs in this time, where we have a Global civilization with full communications and high technology is another. Because once we have open contact, probably what comes next is an alliance. They could not bring the dinosaurs into an alliance with extraterrestrial civilizations.
Yeah.
I'm afraid it wouldn't work. Us, we can. And so what really we're on the threshold is we're going to be allowed into the, quote, party. We're going to be allowed to the table. That's a really big deal. And it took 4 billion years to get to that point.
And those civilizations have experienced that or have seen other planets experience it. So they know how difficult and how long-term that is.
That's the other thing people forget. They don't think about. Because again, we've had scientists telling us there's no other life planets out there until recently. Now, there's billions of life planets. Just turn this off. They've already been through this before.
Yeah.
They have seen this milestone happen before. And who knows how many planets. So this is not, I mean, it varies. There's going to be slight differences. And one key difference is this. We didn't have to develop nuclear weapons. We could have had a society or a world civilization as of, say, 1930s that for whatever reason, because of the historical past, was not inclined toward nation wars, right? Or this warfare.
Mass destruction.
And as a result, we might have discovered atomic knowledge, but not built the weapons.
Like we did with like energy, like what Stanton Friedman was talking about, like using it for a positive purpose. Right?
Again, we could have cracked the atom and built no bombs. We could have simply built nuclear energy. We could have done a lot of things. We could have not had a World War II. It wasn't a foregone conclusion by any means. All right? And so had they come here at roughly the same time, and we weren't using those weapons, we might have had contact already, right? In other words, the interaction and this, what I call coming out event, would have been very, very different. But in our case, we had built these bombs. And so that created a kind of special circumstance. And so this transition has had to incorporate that in it. And so when they escalate the activity in 47, we're on the threshold of building thousands of nuclear weapons. And so instead of having, say, disclosure or contact in 1958 or 62, we're 68 years in, because we are still working our way out of that mess. But they have been through this before, different circumstances, but it always ends up in the same place. Open contact, engagement.
You know, the movie Star Wars and the X-Men and Star Trek was based on indigenous knowledge of our relationship with the greater force, the power.
So you come to the planet Earth 60 million years ago, you got your dinosaurs, you got a bunch of jungle, it's all very interesting, there's a lot of life, you take it, the genetics, you work with it. But once we develop sentience, we are in a different place. And so while I think they have been visiting, they might come every 1,000 years, maybe every 20,000 years, a million years ago. Once sentient turns up, their interest escalates, it increases dramatically. And so, not surprisingly, you start to see, as we approach the modern era, the amount of involvement getting more and more intense.
Especially as that sentient life, as you were pointing out, starts to create all kinds of different technology and replicate it.
Developing atomic weapons and so forth, threatening our own environment, this is a factor.
Yeah.
But the fundamental issue is in us as sentient beings. Now, the poor cetaceans are sentient, but they don't have technology. They don't develop technology, so they're probably interested in them, but not anywhere near the other.
Yeah.
So this is a special time.
We're all looking different directions.
Bravo! That was beautiful.